Hello there, we come so far.
That's correct.
This is day 13 and 14 of the Linux Upskill challenge. I'm cramping it up just a little bit because the theme of the day, groups, users, permissions.
And showtime.
So we discussed it a few lessons ago how sudo works, that certain activities inside the server has to be done with special permissions, but then we didn't explain yet the groups, users, and those permissions are how they interact. So today I'm going to show you how to manage that. So the first thing is to check our groups, etc groups, group, and those are all the groups that are inside our system, but I can't really understand what this is about. We have two kinds of groups and users here. We have the system users, the system groups that you can see as things from the systemd or the Chrome tab, and we have normal groups that are, for example, Ubuntu. We can check the definitions looking for the group ID, GID, inside the file etc login defs. That's for definitions. You're going to see the ID for normal groups will be between 1000 and 6000, and for sys groups it's going to be between 100 and 999. Want to see which groups are the normal groups inside the system? I can use getEnt. That is a get entity group between 1000 and 60,000. Okay, we have as a normal group only Ubuntu. This is the name of the group, and this is the ID, the GID of the group. So let's say that I want to add a new group to this. I can use sudo groupadd, and I want nerds.
You're a nerd.
If I check again for the groups, see that I have the group nerds created here. So I want to create another one. Let's create add jocks. You see that it is going to increment the ID, the group ID. It's going to follow this order, no matter the name. This can be changed, and we're going to change that now. GID, the group ID, will remain the same. Group modification, group mod, -n for name. I want to change to kids, the group that is called nerds, and I check again. Here we are. We change it from nerds to kids. Let's say that I want to delete the group jocks. Groupdel from delete jocks. No longer we have jocks. We only have Ubuntu and kids. What good is a group if I don't have users in that group? Group is a collective of users. If I want to check which are the users that we have, the same thing, we can use etc passwd, and here we have all the users of the system, and we have the definition, the username, the group ID, the user ID, the full name, the directory that is the home, and what kind of shell does it use. But we're seeing a lot of things here. I just want to see again the normal users, not the system users. Grab UID as user ID from etc login definitions. The user IDs go for normal users go from 1000 to 60,000, and the system users are from 100 to 999. The same thing that we have for the groups. Get and password passwd, and the only user that we have that is normal user is Ubuntu. So let's create another user. Sudo adduser, and here I'm going to give you an advice. Use adduser instead of useradd. Adduser is more complete. It's going to do more of the heavy lifting for you, so you don't have to worry which parameters to pass to the command, as opposed to what we have to do with useradd. So here you use adduser. It's going to request a password and a lot of information that you can just go ahead and push it. So if I check again, now we have L check for the groups again, see that L has her own group. Every time you create a user, if you don't specify a group, it's going to create a group for that user automatically. L has the user ID, the UID of 1001, and has the group ID of 1004. I want to create another user, but I want this user to be inside the group adults. -- in group adult Jim. Check again. Now we have Jim. We don't have a group called Jim here. He's inside the group adults. But now I have a lot of different users, and although I can see the group IDs here, I want a better way to visualize this. Groups, Jim, Nancy, and Mike. What are their groups? Jim is inside the group adults. L has her own group. Nancy is with teens and Mike is with kids. Let's say that I want to change the password. You saw that we put the password every time we created a new user, but I want to change that password. So I'm going to use sudo passwd. Let's say I'm going to change the password for Steve, the new password. Password was updated successfully. Barb is no longer with us, so I'm going to delete her user. Sudo userdel Barb, and then she's no longer with us. So let's say that Nancy, that is a teen, just became an adult, so she wants to change groups. We can modify her primary group, that is teens, to adults, no problem. Usermod modification -g, lowercase g, that is for group. We're going to put Nancy in the adults, and now we can check that Nancy is with the adults. Steve is also with the teens, but he became friends with the kids.
Great.
I'm not going to change Steve from the teens to kids. I'm just going to add kids as a secondary group for Steve. Usermod -a for append, capital G. I'm going to append the group kids to Steve. And now Steve is with teens and kids. L is also with kids, so I'm going to add L as well. So these are the changes that we just made, but L changed her name. She's now called Jane, so we can also change her to usermod -L. The new name for L is Jane, so it's new name followed by the old name. And now if I try to get any record of L, I'm not going to find, because she's no longer a user. But Jane is. We just changed the name of the user. We didn't change the name of the group. Groupmod -n, and here we are. We're creating groups, we're creating users, but I'm doing all that as the administrator of this system that is Ubuntu. If I want to log in as another user to test something, where if I am another user, I'll have to use sudo Jane. And now I'm Jane. Let's just say that if my prompt was not set up this way, how would I know which user I'm logging into? Who am I? Simple.
Makes total sense.
I'm Jane. And to get out of that shell, I use exit, and I can use whoami again. And now I'm Ubuntu. The home directory, to check all the users, we can see that everybody got a little directory here. Let's check closely. You see the owner and the group that this was created for. And this is the first thing that we have to get in mind when we think of permissions, because if we're separating the users in different groups, we are under the idea that one group may not interfere with the other unless they have the permission to do it. So all of these are directories, and you can know that those are directories because the description of this file starts with a D for directory. We have the permissions that are supposed to be for the owner, we have the permissions that are supposed to be for the group, and we have the permission that is for the others. So when we think of permissions, we're going to have to consider first the type of the file and the first 3 characters, the permission the user have, next 3 the permissions the group have, and the last 3 the permissions others in the system have. What does these RWXs mean? We have read permissions, we have write permissions, and we have execute permissions. What defines that a directory or a file should be created with this kind of permissions here? We have the umask. Let's see the symbolic way. This umask defines that most of the files are going to be created with all the permissions for users, all the permissions for the group, and just read and execute permissions for others. This can vary a little bit, but this is the general idea. If I take the symbolic out, you're going to see that this is the umask. Here is where the confusion starts, because this is the octal notation.
What?
What is octal notation? The first number is a directory or a regular file, and these 3 little numbers here are the octal notation for the permissions. First one is for user, the second one is for group, and the third one is for the others. Don't be too scared about the octal notation. If you learn how to use the symbolic, the octal notation is going to come to you naturally after some time. I created a directory for the kids, that is the kids layer. If I check the permissions for that, you see that is created by the root. I want to change that ownership. I want it to be under the ownership of the kids group. Change ch group grp. I want to change to kids, the kids layer. Root is still the owner, but the group ownership is now kids, Mike. And I want to create a file. I still cannot do it. Only gives the permission to write to the owner, that is root, but it does not give the permission to write to the group. I have to change that. Chmod group plus write on the kids layer. Let's go sudo mic and try it again. Aha! Alright, you see that I could not do anything inside that directory until my group have that permission. And if I was not from that group, let's say I'm going to change from Mike to Nancy, and I try to get something in here, I cannot do it. Why? Because Nancy is not from the kids group. There's no permission to others here. So Nancy have a baseball bat, and she want to give this to Steve. They are not from the same group, so even if I wanted to change owner to Steve, this baseball bat is not going to happen, because I need to be in a higher level of privilege to do that. And you see that Nancy is not in the sudoers file. She could do that if she have the privilege to do it. So we can check that file, the sudoers, vsudo. Here we go, etc sudoers, and I want Nancy to have some root privileges. I can put her name here and copy all this information, write it out, yes, and exit. So the next time that I am Nancy and I want to change the ownership of the baseball bat to Steve, Steve is the owner of the baseball bat now. The group owner of the baseball bat is still adults. So that's it, folks. Thanks for watching. See you next time.